Hello again, Phil Z here with a video. One of my students requested that I do a video about basic lead guitar techniques. And even though these are basic techniques that most every lead guitar player uses in rock and blues, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy. They take a while to master, so you just got to keep messing with them until you feel comfortable with it. In the last video about pentatonic extensions, we covered the hammer, which is where you pick the first finger note in the 5th fret. I'm in the A minor pentatonic. And then your 3rd finger hammers on to the 7th fret. And I talked about how it's like grabbing a fly, trying to catch a fly. So you close the finger really quick. If I mute the strings, you'll hear tapping. So that's how hard I'm hitting the string in the fretboard. Then you have the pull off, which is the reverse of that. That's where you have both fingers down on the string. You're going to pick that 3rd string, and instead of just lifting the finger off, which you don't get a very strong note by doing that, you actually want to pull the finger downward and pluck the string with that 3rd finger. When you do that, you're going to hit the strings that are below the string that you're doing the technique on, and you don't want to hear those. What I'm doing to keep those strings quiet is positioning my 1st finger so that it is touching those strings. I'm not pushing them down, but I'm just touching them so they're muted. So you want to have that 1st finger curled and have it just in the right position so it's touching those other strings. So now I can do the pull off, the hammer, or I'm just going to do a pull off. Then you can combine the hammer and the pull, so you do a pick, hammer, pull. A good exercise to practice is to get it going and then just continue doing that without picking the string anymore. So everything is being played with your fretting hand. You can use a metronome if you want to gradually increase your speed. But this is where your speed comes from when you're playing rock and blues. Another lick you can practice is to do your hammer and pull, and then end on the 4th string A root note. Sounds like Silent Night. Silent Night. Another technique I'm using to do that is I'm sweeping on the 4th and 3rd strings. If I were to start that lick with the root note that's on the 4th string and then go to the 3rd string to do the hammer and pull, that's one way to practice the sweep. So the sweep is, instead of picking the 4th and 3rd strings using an individual picking motion, you use a more of a strumming motion, and then you follow it with the hammer and pull. Another exercise you can do is to take your Form 1 pentatonic and do a hammer pull on the first string, then end on the high note on the second string, 8th fret. Then you're going to walk that through the whole scale. So you do the first to the second string, second string to the third string, third string to the fourth, and so on, 4, 5, 5, and then just end on your A root note. The next step is to get rid of the pause in between each group of notes. So it's continuous. The next exercise, or the next technique, is the slide. The slide is something that you can add pretty much anywhere. A good place to add a slide is at the beginning of your lick. So let's say if I'm going to do my root note, my basic lick there, I can start with the slide. So adding the slide just adds a little sound effect to your target note and makes it sound more interesting. It doesn't matter too much where you begin your slide, but at first I usually suggest you begin your slide pretty close to your target note. So if your target note is a 7th fret on the 4th string, you might want to start from the 5th fret. That way you're not too far away. A couple different ways to do the slide. One is to pick the note that you're beginning the slide on and then slide. That way you're hearing two notes. It depends on the lick you're doing. Other times you might just want to hear the slide technique and then the target note and not really hear much of that beginning note. The way to do that is to start your slide as soon as you pick the string. So again, you're just adding a little technique, a little sound effect to your target note. Some people, more modern guitar players, will slide from a higher note. That has a little different effect. And let's see, what kind of a lick can we do there? We can do a lick where we're going to slide from on the 3rd string, 5 to 7 and back. And then the same thing on the 4th. Same thing on the 5th. And then down to the lower extension. What the slides do in the hammers and pulls is it smooths out your licks. In other words, if I were to pick those notes, it sounds kind of jagged, not real smooth. So the slides and the hammers and pulls, when you use those, it smooths that out so you're not picking every note. If you listen to Hendrix, you'll hear he did a lot of slides all over the place. The next technique I want to talk about is vibrato. So vibrato is, there's a number of different ways to do it, and I'm not saying that one way is the right way or a better way. Each person just kind of finds their own way to do it, and in some cases the vibrato can help you to identify a certain guitar player. They just have their own way of doing it. What I see most rock and blues players do is this technique where you position the knuckle at the end of your first finger up against the guitar like that. And let's say if I want to add vibrato to the 7th fret on the 3rd string. So the finger is touching the string and the fret, and the last joint in my first finger is resting against the guitar. Now what's going to happen, I'm going to exaggerate the movement here, is your forearm is going to turn like this. And the motion is similar to turning a doorknob. So you can feel what your muscles are doing in your forearm when you do that. Now you're not going to have to turn that much. It's going to be just a very slight movement, but that's just an exaggeration to show you what's going on. So I'm going to pick that note, and then I'm going to bend the string by using my knuckle method there. And I'm doing it real slow just to show you the motion. Let me get these other fingers out of the way if I can. And then after a while you'll develop a nice smooth motion there. Some people have a fast vibrato. Angus Young comes to mind. Some people have a really wide vibrato. So again, there's a lot of different ways to do that, and you might change the vibrato depending on the song you're doing or the effect that you want to get. So a good exercise is to go through your pentatonic scale and add vibrato to each note. You run into a little bit of an issue with the first string, because if you pull the string down, you'll pull it off the neck. We don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to push the string up, just like when we're doing a bend. We'll talk about bends here in a little bit. So when you do that, you're just pushing the string up a little bit and then relaxing to let it come back down. And then the first finger, same thing. Then I go to the second string. Now I can go back to using my pivot. Third string, fourth, fifth string, another technique that is used a lot is string bending. String bending is difficult to do for beginners because it hurts like hell. Your fingers pushing on this little itty bitty string, this wire string, and it's going to hurt. So once you get some nice tough calluses built up, it won't be so bad. The basic technique for a bend, I'm going to use the third string to start. It's the easier one to bend. So I got my third finger on the third string, 7th fret. And if I try to bend that string just with the one finger, I can do it, but it's a little bit hard to do. If I add the second finger behind the third finger in the 6th fret, I'm going to use more muscles. Now it's easier to do. Then I'm going to add more muscles by including my thumb muscles. So what the thumb is doing is squeezing, just like you're squeezing a ball. So as pick the string and push the string up towards the thumb is exerting pressure down towards the fingers. So the more muscles you can get involved, the more control you're going to have over the technique. Some people even use their index finger on that string to bend. Most of your bends are a whole step, so that means you're skipping a fret. If I'm bending the 7th fret, I want it to sound like the 9th fret. One song or melody you can associate that with is "You Really Got Me." You really got me. Oh, you really got me. Oh yeah. So in your head, you want to hear that note and try to bend up to that note. The second string, 8th fret, is a little harder just because the string is smaller, so it's going to hurt a little bit more. And then the first string hurts a little bit more. If you bend the first string anywhere on the neck, and if the note kind of dies out or chokes out when you get to the top, that could indicate that your neck or your guitar needs an adjustment. So you might want to get that checked out if that's the case. If you're really struggling with bending, you can go to a lighter set of strings. You can go all the way down to a set of 8s. That means your first string is an 8 on the first string. Most guitars come with 9s. This guitar has 10s on it because I ate my spinach this morning. So you can, a lot of people say, well, I want to go to a heavier string because it's going to sound better. And that might be true, but the whole idea is to make it as easy as you can at first, and that way you'll be able to practice for a longer period of time before your fingers give out. And the more time you can put into practicing, the better. And then later on down the road, you can always go up to a heavier string if you want to try that. One technique you can do is to combine bending and vibrato, and this is very difficult, so you might not be able to do it at first. But let's say if I want to bend the third string, and that's going to be the easier one. And another thing I didn't mention is on the third string, you also have the option of pulling the string down, which might be easier at the beginning too, because you have plenty of room on either side of that string. The first and second strings, you have to push those up because you just don't have enough room to pull down on those. This technique is where you bend the string, and then while you're in your position, you release the string just a little bit, push it back up, release it, push it back up, however many times that you want to add vibrato to that note. And again, the second and first strings will be a little bit harder to do because of the string size. But that's a technique that you'll run into quite a bit. Let's see, what else can I talk about here? Oh yeah, you can also do bending with your first finger. If you recall, we talked about the lower and upper extension to the pentatonic. That's where you start on your lower string, string 6, and you go 2 frets lower to start your lower extension. You do a box of 4 notes on the top 2 strings, followed by a slide. So that's 3, 5, 3, 5, 7. Then you begin the next group on the 4th string, 5th fret. And the last box starts on the 8th fret on the 2nd string. Since it's a whole step as you go from note to note, you can do what are called first finger bends. Now the trick here is, now sometimes you can do a bend, release it, and then go to your next note. Or you can do your bend, and then as you get to the top of the bend, you mute the string with your pick, and then play the next note. So it sounds like you're just going bow. And then I do the 3 to 5 on the 5th string, 5 to 7 on the 5th string, 5 to 7 on the 4th, 5 to 7 on the 3rd. Then I go to my upper extension, 7 to 9 on the 3rd, 8 to 10 on the 2nd string. Notice I'm pushing up on that one, and the same thing on the 1st string, 8 to 10. The first finger bends are a little harder to do because you're only able to use 1 finger for the bend instead of 2. And one thing I do is, once you get some calluses built up, I'm grabbing the string with the edge of the callus. So I turn my finger just a little bit. Instead of having it straight like that, I'm turning it, and I'm able to grab the edge of that callus, and that gives me a little bit more of a grab. And again, I'm using my pivot point with my finger. Okay. And you can do things like so it gives you that many more notes that you can bend. When you go back to the third finger notes, the notes that sound the best to bend are the high notes on the first, second, and third string. So that's the 8th fret on the first string, 8th fret on the second, and the 7th fret on the third. So those are the ones that you'll end up bending the most when you're in your form 1 position. When you go to your upper extension, the note that is bent the most is your 10th fret note on the first string. You can also bend the 9th fret on the third string. I like that. Some bends might only be a half step. So let's say we're doing our root note A on the 4th string, and then we're going to the 3rd string, 5th fret. If I bend that a half step up to the 6th fret note, what I'm doing there is going from a note that's in the minor scale, which is the 5th fret note, and then as I bend that, I'm going to the note that's in the major scale. And that's done a lot when you're doing a song in the key of A major, because that way, by bending up to that major note, it's going to fit better with that major chord. Now when it goes to the next chord, D, your 4 chord, then you go back to your minor note. Same thing when it goes to the 5 chord E, the minor is going to work better with that. Back to 4. So when you're back to that 1 chord is when you can either do a hammer from 5 to 6, or a bend, or a slide. Again, you can add different techniques to get from one note to the next. That same pair of notes occurs on the first string going from 8 to 9. One thing I did not address when I was doing the extensions is that when you go up to the upper extension minor, and if you're in a song that's in a major key, which most songs are, then if you move that house shape 2 more frets so that you're in 10 and 12, these notes will give you a major sound. And a lot of guitar players will shift back and forth between those 2 house shapes. You do have to learn a different set of licks for each position though. If you do the same lick in minor and then try to do that same lick in major, it's not going to sound right, and that's because your root notes are now moved. So when you're in the upper extension minor, your root note is a 3rd finger note on the 10th string. So that's home bass. Now when you switch over to major, the note is in the same location, but now it's a 1st finger note. So now you want to end on that note. And then you can switch back and forth. One thing about the major extension is that the note on the 1st string, 10th fret, is a weak note, and it's not one that you want to hang on, but you can use it to pass over. Okay. And you'll hear, like Clapton, a lot of B.B. King, they like to use that. So I can play in my A minor. Then it changes to the 4 chord. Back to minor. Major. So that's done a lot by guitar players, shifting back and forth between the major and minor upper extensions. I can't think of anything else right now. I might want to do another video sometime on just some licks I like to do. And if you have any requests for anything else, and again, my approach is for people that are learning for fun. They might not have a lot of time to practice. They're not looking at to be an Eric Clapton or Jeff Beck or anything. So I try to keep things as simple as I can and not get too complicated with the theory. So let me know if you have any requests for anything else, and I'll do my best to try to put together a video for you. So thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you soon.